Hi, I'm Paul Feiner. I'm the Greenburgh Town Supervisor, and we have a really interesting program. We're interviewing two community activists, Jess Monette and Amy Hill, and they're with an organization called Mothers Out Front. Could you tell us what Mothers Out Front is?
Sure. So Mothers Out Front is a national grassroots organization, and there are chapters all throughout the country, but we have a few here in Westchester. So I'm a member of the Westchester Rivers Towns team, so I'm a volunteer with them. And there's also a Northern Westchester team, which Jess is a part of, and a Southern Westchester team.
And what got you involved in this?
So I live in Montrose, which is a little north of here between Peekskill and Croton, and I have a nearly 4-year-old son, but last summer he was a little over 2, and there was a lot going on, a lot that I felt like I was trying to figure out where I wanted to put my focus to take action, and I think there was a lot of wildfires at the time. There were a few days where I couldn't take my son Charlie outside to play. I was just really searching for a focus to not just protect my family, but my neighbors and the vulnerable communities that live near me. And I came across Mothers Out Front on social media, I think initially. They were putting a call out for advocacy training. And I applied to do that. They were looking for folks in different legislative districts around the state. And so I was chosen to do that program. And I did like a 6-month advocacy training program with them, which was amazing. And I learned so much, like advocacy basics and a lot of legislative basics and stuff like that. And then when I completed that at the beginning of this year in February, I connected with my local Northern Westchester chapter of Mothers Out Front. And that's been really wonderful. It's such an incredible group of women. They've accomplished so much, led so much. They have so much knowledge. I am very green, no pun intended, to this work. I'm learning a lot, but I've only been doing it for a year. But that's kind of how I found Mothers Out Front, and it's continued to be a great way to take action and continue to connect to projects.
And what got you involved? And you live in Tarrytown?
I live in Tarrytown. So I had moved to Tarrytown about 7 years ago with my husband and 2 little boys. They were 1 and 3 at the time when we moved here. And I've always been interested in volunteering and a nature lover, but never actively involved with anything. I'm like no expert at all in environmental stuff. I still am not. But when I moved here, there was just like all these terrible things on the news about like record numbers of heat and the glaciers melting and wildfires here and smoke here, and I felt so helpless. But I was also in this stage of motherhood where I had a 1 and a 3-year-old, and I was totally sleep deprived, and I'm an occupational therapist for my profession, but I was taking some time off then to be at home, so I felt like I couldn't really commit to doing anything really at the time with young kids, but I had this like, oh, something needs to be done. I can't just like sit back and not be doing anything. So when we moved here at the preschool where my son started going to, I heard about Mothers Out Front, that some moms were involved. And the organization is for mothers, but it's for all caregivers. Everybody is welcome. We have dads, we have grandmas, we have aunts. So everybody is welcome. But I learned about this group, and not only was it so empowering to learn about this local climate action that was going on, but it was like, oh, they're not only going to be like welcoming of my unpredictable schedule or allowing my kids to come to these events or meetings, and but they're also going to like channel that and say, oh, like your mom voice is this really powerful tool to help get things done, like to speak to elected officials or to the school boards or to our local mayor. And I was like, oh, so it's not just that like, okay, I'm in this early motherhood sleep deprived stage that I have to sit back and wait. Like, no, I'm going to channel that into advocacy. So
and does your organization mainly focus on environmental issues, or is it a wide range of issues?
Yes. So Mothers Out Front is a national grassroots organization, and we work to ensure a livable climate, a livable, healthy climate for all children, with an emphasis on climate justice. And it's about empowering mothers and others. It's for everybody is welcome, but to take action and transform unjust systems so that all children can live, play, and learn in a healthy climate.
Yeah, actually, just as an advertisement for the town, we're going to be putting solar canopies at the town hall parking lot.
Nice.
within the next 2 months.
that's
They're actually,
Great.
so I'm excited about that.
That's
and
exciting.
we're also in Greenburgh going to be starting curbside pickup of food recycling,
scraps.
and we're going to start that in April.
That's
But
wonderful.
that's
That's
for
great.
unincorporated Greenburgh. I think the villages are looking at it also.
Okay.
But I sort of feel that I'm really excited about it because I put it in the budget, and we're definitely going to do it starting in April. Is that one of the types of issues you would work on?
Absolutely.
That's great. That's the
Yeah.
first time anybody ever applauded me on the show. So now,
No, definitely, especially with composting. I think that's definitely been a focus for my passion within the organization. Composting anywhere in Westchester is so impactful because if we can divert anything from the Wheelabrator incinerator, which a lot of people don't even realize in Westchester, that's where all of our trash goes. Most of the solid waste goes there to be burned. And I live about a mile from there, and the air quality is not always that great. And also Peekskill, of course, is very vulnerable to that. So I love talking about Mothers Out Front and then always segueing into composting and figuring out ways to divert as much stuff out of the incinerator as we can.
yeah, because it's we have twice a week garbage pickup, and if everybody would compost their food, you probably could cut back a lot.
Any of the food scraps, that's wet waste, and that requires a lot more energy and actually uses a lot of fracked gas to burn at the incinerator. So food scraps is kind of the best thing you can get out of being burned out of the incinerator.
Are you concerned about all the news stories about plastic recycling? That it's
Yeah.
not really being done as much as people realize. It's not as effective as people think.
Yeah, I think I've asked that question of somebody who has a lot more information. Like Amy said, one of the greatest things I gained when I started with Mothers Out Front was someone said to me, you don't have to be an expert, you just have to care. And so we care a lot, but I'm not an expert. But I asked somebody about that, and they said Westchester actually does pretty good with their plastics recycling. Of course, you do want to get it out of the incinerator, but there is a good, I think if like you're in the 1 through 5 or the 1 through 7, it's been followed, and it does actually.
Yeah, I had interviewed the county deputy, commissioner on the show, and he mentioned that he feels that the plastics that we're recycling are actually being, recycled. But around the country and around the world, it's not as effective.
Right. So it has been disappointing to hear how low the recycling is, but proud to know that Westchester has been doing an above average job with that. As Mothers Out Front, we are in total support of plastic reduction and recycling and composting, but we do try to focus most on buildings and transportation. And when I first got involved in Mothers Out Front, I was like, ugh, buildings and transportation? Like, that's not areas of interest for me. Like, I don't really want to do legislation and bigger topics like that. But what I learned from Mothers Out Front is that that's where the largest source of emissions in New York State is coming from. And if we really want to make an impact, that's where we should channel most of our energy. So we do a lot of projects with things like composting and plastics reduction and recycling and pollinator gardens and clothing swaps and more fun, but type more direct community-based things like that. But at the heart of our mission for our teams is to reduce emissions through buildings and transportation. So we do a lot of advocacy for things like electric school buses, transitioning off of dirty diesel buses to healthier and greener electric school buses, and working within the communities to help new construction and within people's homes to get greener with reducing reliance on fossil fuels by things like geothermal and solar panels and induction stovetops. So that's why it's so great to hear about the work that you have been doing with solar panels, because that is such a powerful way to make a real impact on
Greenburgh was like the first community, I think, in the region to put solar panels at the town hall, and now we're upgrading it. So if when you walk out of the building, you could sort of see all the new solar panels that we have.
That's great.
And again, within the next 2 months, we'll have the solar canopies, and one of the things that I want to work on, and maybe this is an issue that Mothers Out Front could do, when we get the solar canopies, there's like a lot of shopping centers in the town with large parking lots, and I can't understand why they don't have the solar canopies for the
Right.
parking areas because there's no trees around there. So maybe Mothers Out Front might want to, we're going to reach
Yeah.
out to a lot of the commercial landlords after our canopies are up and say, why
That's
don't
a
you do
great
that?
idea.
How often does Mothers Out Front meet? Like how often
So
does
every chapter
Your
decides
chapter,
for
say.
themselves on what's best for them. So our chapter, the Westchester River Towns, we usually meet monthly and we rotate daytime, evening, in person versus on Zoom just to try to make it accessible for everybody. But then we also have events happening throughout the month.
And
it
how
goes-
often does your group meet?
Same, yeah. We meet every month, and it's usually in person, and and then we'll end up seeing each other at different events as well.
That's great. And how many members, how many members do you have in your chapters, and how do people get involved if somebody's listening and said, "Oh, I'd like to get active"?
So it varies. We have about 15 to 20 active members who are very involved in the general process, and then we have 100 or so like supporting members. And if anybody is interested in getting involved, you could go to the website mothersoutfront.org, and from there it will list each different team, and you can select on the team that's closest to your geographic area, and then it has our emails, and you could reach out to us from there, and we can connect you with the best way to get involved. You could also follow us on social media, and we post about the different events going on and upcoming meetings and different opportunities to get involved. And one thing that's really nice about Mothers Out Front is that we just are looking for anybody who is interested in getting involved. You don't have to make any time commitment. We work with whatever works for you. So if you have a really busy schedule and can't come to meetings, but you would like to participate, like we have some members who are very artistic, so they may make a flyer for us or posters for when we go to Albany for an advocacy event. So, or some people will do social media or help to draft a letter or translate certain documents. So there's like all different ways to get involved, whether or not you can come to events or meetings. So that's been a really nice component for us at Mothers Out Front, because there's always a way to get involved.
Bouncing off that a little bit too, I think, and something you asked earlier about, is Mothers Out Front strictly climate justice? It is. It's a climate justice organization, but one of the reasons I did decide a year ago to focus my energy on Mothers Out Front is because climate is so intersectional to so many other issues and impacts so many other communities, social justice, housing inequity, all kinds of things. So I think that's another reason people might be interested in getting involved. And like Amy said, there's a lot to do. You can lend your support to all different kinds of things. And I found Mothers Out Front to be a really terrific way to stay connected to a lot of other organizations that are doing work, like Food and Water Watch, New York Communities for Change. There's always work to do, postcarding, rallies, all kinds of stuff. So
that is great. I was sort of thinking a number of years ago, there was a woman who was active. She was a soccer mom, and she then eventually ran for U.S. Senate and won. And I'm wondering if either of you could see yourself ever running for office because you've been involved. Maybe I'm talking to a future governor.
Probably not a future governor. It's funny, like you said, I'm not interested in getting in, wasn't interested in getting into legislative stuff. And I have to say last summer too, I was really looking for ways to impact locally, to protect my neighbors, to protect vulnerable communities. And then you get involved and you do start being connected to more electeds and meeting people who are going to Albany, and that is very interesting. But no, still not. I probably wouldn't be doing that work. I'll keep it local.
And what about you?
Community.
My immediate reaction is no. That's just like not a pathway I could see. But at the same time, like when I started volunteering several years ago with Mothers Out Front, would I ever have thought that we'd be on a show with you right now, or going to rallies at different events and speaking? And we have relationships now with our local assembly member and mayor, and so I would have. One thing that is very supportive of Mothers Out Front is they train you and give you the tools and the guidance that you need to move up. So
yeah, I was also thinking, do you, since you relatively recently have gotten involved, what's your impression of our processes? Are you like jaded about politics, or do you feel I as a citizen can make a difference? And are you optimistic about our democracy?
Well, It's been a challenging time in politics in general. It's just how divided the country and the world has been. So that has been very disheartening. But locally, from the advocacy that we have done, it has been very empowering that we now have a relationship with our assembly member and mayor and local school board and have seen positive change from the things that we've advocated for. So one example is we advocate for electric school buses, both because that's a greener and a healthier way for our kids to be on the bus, the staff to be on the bus, the community as a whole. And what's great about them is that they're cleaner, healthier, and greener. But what's bad about them is that they're more expensive. So when we started the conversation with our school district about them, they were like, yeah, sure, sounds great, but like, where are we gonna get this funding from? So at one of our Mothers Out Front events, which was an induction cooking event, we invited our locally assembly member at the time, and he attended, and we gave a little presentation about why electric school buses were so important. And at the event, he offered us the funding to cover not us, but the school district, the funding to cover the difference in cost between a traditional diesel bus and the electric school bus.
So you really made a big difference.
So it was like, wow, things are actually happening here. And so on a local level, it has been very rewarding to form these relationships and to be able to help.
That is great. Now I feel better about our democracy.
No, I think people connecting with organizations like Mothers Out Front is optimistic, and finding ways for me has just been to say yes to things like this, to coming and meeting you, saying yes, showing up to a rally, saying yes to speaking in different places. People feel like they can't do that maybe because they're not an expert or they don't know everything, but they can. And I think that's optimism, is wanting to use your voice for
and
sure.
Also, if there's like 15 people who reach out to local elected officials, it has like enormous impact.
Yeah.
Because there's not many times where 15 people will speak on one issue. Another issue that I think you've been involved in is the gas pipelines, and you're not for the proposed gas pipeline, right?
No, yeah. So like Amy mentioned, a big campaign of Mothers Out Front is to move away from fossil fuels, to transition off of gas. Natural gas itself is a misnomer, right? It's not natural. You can't dig down into the ground and just find it. It has to use millions and millions of gallons of water with a hydraulic drill to crack the earth open and extract the gas. So that's the gas that's in our homes. That's how it gets there. As Amy mentioned, the gas we use to heat, cook, and heat our water, sources of that are the largest emitters in New York State of methane. So we definitely want to move away from those type of fuels and move towards renewable energy. Natural gas is not renewable energy. And so there's a lot going on right now with that. You may have heard, or a lot of people have heard, that there's several pipelines coming up. There's 3 of them mainly. It's the Williams-Nessie pipeline, which would be a new pipeline, Constitution pipeline, which would be a new pipeline, and the Algonquin pipeline, which is an existing pipeline that they want to expand. I will talk a little bit about the Williams-Nessie pipeline because I think that's the most pressing one that's coming up, because it is suspected that Governor Hochul may approve construction of that pipeline. That would run from New Jersey through the Rockaways, and it has already been killed before. They were denied a water permit because the construction of the pipeline would be stirring up so much toxic sediment from the seabed. It would endanger the ecosystems there, and of course impact the communities that are local to the Rockaways that depend on tourism, and people that come to the beaches to sustain those economies would no longer be able to swim in that area. So that's one of the main reasons why organizations like Mothers Out Front and other organizations we're in coalition with have been working on that. And of course also utility customers would be paying for the construction of that pipeline, and New Yorkers don't want to pay for more dirty energy. We want Governor Hochul to move to cleaner sources of energy. When we're talking about the pipelines, we want to encourage people to take action and to let Governor Hochul know that we don't want any new pipelines in New York. You can go to the mothersoutfront.org website to find calls to action there. You can also call Governor Hochul directly. We encourage you to do that. You can call her at 518-474-8390 and let her know these pipelines are not safe for our communities or our planet.
Now, I remember like years ago, I was active in, there's a group called IPSEC, which is opposing Indian Point, so I was very active trying to fight Indian Point because it's on an earthquake fault and it's near all these, 20 million people could be impacted, and I was worried that, there could be a terrorist attack or something. So now whenever, I go around, people are saying, it's because of people like you who opposed Indian Point. We don't have, our energy rates are going, up. And then they'll say, what about the gas pipes? Now everybody, all the environmentalists are fighting the gas pipes, so the rates are going to go up again. How would you respond to that? Because I get this.
Sure.
This way I'll take some notes.
Yeah. Again, not an expert, but I would say more gas doesn't equal lower utility rates. So bringing more gas in isn't going to lower people's bills. Bills are actually going to get higher because of the construction of these pipelines. So that was what I was talking about a little bit as to shouldering the cost of those. I think when we talk about renewable energy versus fossil fuels, we need to be looking at funding for programs that are helping people transition to heat pumps and taking care of communities who are shouldering the burden of paying for these programs.
Or like even solar, in 5 years, will pay for itself. My brother-in-law, I live in a condo, so I don't have the heat pumps in the condo, but my brother-in-law put a heat pump, in his house, saving an enormous amount of money.
Yeah.
So that's what really is needed, and unfortunately, now a lot of the incentives are being cut by the federal government. So that's something that you might want to get involved in.
Which is very disappointing because, we would like to advocate for that because, for example, as a local homeowner, we have benefited a lot from those incentives. And I learned a lot from others out front. I didn't know what geothermal was before becoming a member, but now my home is heated and cooled through geothermal, which is a much greener, and it was an affordable way to update our heating and cooling system and a much more sustainable way. So with the solar panels fueling it, so we made a lot of updates to our home, like we switched to a plug-in hybrid car, which is also getting charged through the solar, and added insulation so that the heating is more efficient. So those incentives made it possible. So yes, back to your question before, it's very complicated, the issue of gas prices and the changes, but it's such a international situation that the prices it's very hard to follow the path and how, so we do need to make sure that there is enough energy sources coming through, but if we're gonna put our efforts and money into it, it should be in clean energy ways rather than dirty fossil fuel ways, because all the money that gets invested to that now, that's locking us into decades more of emissions and fossil fuels. So we wanna channel that into the cleaner energy sources like solar and wind so that we are preventing all these natural disasters that end up costing billions of dollars in recovery efforts too.
Yeah, and all of this is stuff that we, the least we can do now is focus on it today. We should have been focusing on it a long time ago. And I think that, to your point about people saying to you rates are getting higher because Indian Point closed or because, or paying more for gas because there's not enough of it. These markets are volatile and they're impacted by things all the time. Shutting down Indian Point isn't why people are paying more in electric, and bringing more gas in isn't going to lower people's utility rates for gas.
The local legislator is receptive to your efforts, especially fighting the gas pipes?
Yeah, there are people who are really passionate about it. Emiliano Lage is really passionate about it. Assemblymember Levenberg is very supportive. So it's important that everybody is letting Governor Hochul know that we don't want any more pipelines, no more new gas infrastructure in New York.
And does the proposed gas pipelines, any of them go through Tarrytown or Greenburgh?
So there's been so much opposition to this. Many of the municipalities down the river have signed resolutions saying no to it. Tarrytown, Sleepy Hollow, Irvington, Cortland, where I am, Croton, the list goes on and on.
I'm just sort of wondering if like, say, the governor, say it goes through, will it go through any parts of, like, say, Tarrytown?
So there's a different pipeline. So the Algonquin pipeline, which already exists, was the one you were talking about that goes under Indian Point, would be expanded. The new pipeline, Constitution pipeline, would be the one that's coming down and would be impacting those areas like Peekskill and come down. I don't know if it would go under Tarrytown.
I don't think specifically Tarrytown, but in Westchester County
Yeah, in Westchester.
it would be
Right.
going.
Again, could you tell us, again, for people who want to get involved, how they do so?
Yeah, mothersoutfront.org is a great way to get involved. There's really wonderful social accounts, the national account, Mothers Out Front New York, and then each chapter has accounts as well.
How many years has Mothers Out Front been in existence? Is it a relatively new organization, or you know?
10 years.
I think it's about 10. Yeah, there were two mothers who in Boston who were friendly, and they were getting increasingly concerned about climate and wanted to protect their children's futures, and they just started to talk to other parents in the community, and they'd have small meetings in their living room, and they would start on small advocacy projects, and it slowly grew into a national organization. So it was about 10 years, and I got involved about 7 years ago.
Yeah, I was just sort of thinking, like, off the top of my head, I said, the Boy Scouts now allows girls to join the Boy Scouts, and I'm wondering if a man would want to join Mothers Out Front. Can they, or do you have to be a mother?
No, any
Absolutely.
caregiver, yeah, anybody is welcome that wants to support the organization and come in and do work to support
So you don't
climate
have to be a
justice.
mother,
You don't have to be a
Absolutely
mother.
not.
And I did
and
want
you
to
could be a
mention
man
too.
also?
It can be
Yes.
my next door neighbor, a man.
be-
He has been actively involved with our
Oh,
group, and we have people in the group who don't have children. But anybody who is dedicated to wanting to protect children's future, not directly their
So
child, but anybody.
when you say Mothers Out Front, it really is mothers that started this and were out front organizing this effort, but it's open to anybody.
Yes,
anybody is
absolutely.
That
welcome.
is great.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, like checking out mothersoutfront.org and getting connected to events that are coming up. We have a few. We have an event coming up in Croton that's about repealing the 100-foot rule, which was part of New York Heat. It's going to be like a Halloween event with kids, and it'll be fun.
And
then,
ice cream, free ice cream.
ice cream. And then there's also an event coming up in December where we'll go to Albany to talk to tell Governor Hochul to get the 100-foot rule repealed.
Well, this is really great, and I really appreciate your involvement. And I think that in a democracy, it's important for people to speak out and to express themselves and to lobby for causes. And you're definitely making a big difference in the planet. So
Thank you so much,
Thank
Paul.
you, and thanks for all that you do for
It
our
was
communities.
great. Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you.